British airline EasyJet posted a third quarter pre-tax loss of £318 million for the 3 months ending June 30th. This is only marginally less than the £349 million it lost a year earlier when there was virtually no flying due to the COVID pandemic. The airline has now passed more than £1 billion in losses for the first 3 quarters of its current financial year. The company, though, is optimistic for the future as it plans to fly 60% of its pre-pandemic capacity in July through September as the travel recovery takes hold in mainland Europe, and Britain is expected to catch up in the coming weeks. Joining us to discuss further is Tim Vollans, analyst at Macrodesiac in sunny Almeria, Spain. Tim, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Starting with United, what do you make of the second quarter performance from them?
Well, I mean, it's definitely encouraging. The airlines have obviously taken a real beating through the pandemic, but they're starting to turn it around. I think we can call it green shoots of recovery. The revenue, obviously, at United quadrupled from a year ago, so it's at 5.4 billion in the last quarter, which was just very slightly above estimates, and there's a lot of that has been put down to domestic travel rebounding. And what we're also seeing is the quarterly revenue as well it's at half where it was in the same quarter of 2019, because obviously when we're comparing these figures to 2020, as you've got on the screen there now, it's distorted by the pandemic. So really we can only anchor things back to the 2019 quarter. So they're about half the way back now in terms of revenues they're bringing in, but they're still losing money.
Thanks for that. Tim, we look at revenue breakdown for United. They saw a big jump in passenger and cargo revenues. I know you mentioned distortions, but is that encouraging looking at those figures?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the real sort of driver of this at the moment is the leisure and domestic travel. That's nearly back to the pre-pandemic levels. So what we're missing is the return for international travel. And obviously with that, we'll see more cargo revenues as well. So the kind of key metric to watch is one that they've mentioned in the earnings, is the sales to flight capacity. So filling the planes up essentially. So the more people and the more cargo they can get into each flight, the more profitable that will be. And they're not expecting a full recovery in that demand until 2023. So yes, it's encouraging for sure, but there's some hard yards ahead, to get us back to the previous levels.
Great stuff. Now, looking at their expenses, we saw spending increases in aircraft fuel, maintenance, and landing fees. How do you interpret that as far as those expenses going up?
Yeah, I mean, the maintenance and landing fees are an ever-present expense for any airline. Obviously, again, it's all part of it. It's a fixed expense that they've got, roughly speaking. So every flight they have to cover that, and obviously fuel costs, if you compare them to the year before as well. Fuel costs have gone up enormously in that time, because in 2020 they were on the floor. So again, it's all part of more activity. It's all positive. It's what you want to see, but at the same time, they're still burning money, and they need to get these passengers, and these need to get more flights in the air. And especially, the international borders, I think, is going to be the real breakthrough once the international travel can return.
All right, so thank you, Tim. United last month, they unveiled their largest ever aircraft order for about 270 jets in a push to boost domestic capacity by almost 30%. That bet that they're making, is that risky considering the environment? What do you make of that purchase that they made?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge bet. They're putting out a load of money, a huge amount of investment into this, and also it's another bet on domestic, because it's United are actually more dependent on international travel than rival airlines such as Delta and American. So it's not. I'm not really sure what to make of that. Whether or not it's just a general sort of take advantage of low financing costs. And really push on, like you see with a lot of the start of a lot of economic cycles. There's generally a lot of investment, and obviously rates and everything are through the floor at the moment. They're very low. It's a cheap bet to make in terms of the actual the cost in the interest cost. But I'm not sure about it tactically. I'm not sure whether or not it sort of signifies a bit of a shift to more focus on the domestic market as well, or whether it's just generally sort of increasing the fleet.
Great stuff. Let's hop over to Europe now to look at EasyJet. What do you make of their Q3 for their financial year, their Q3 performance for EasyJet?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely positive. There's still a way to go in Europe as well. Obviously, there's big problems, there's big differences really more than anything between the regulations on mainland Europe and the UK, and different traffic light systems, reopening at different rates and everything. And I think that's going to weigh on EasyJet's performance for the time being, because not because of anything that they're doing in particular, but more because of the passengers. People just don't want to take the risk of flying, when they don't know whether or not they're going to be ending up in quarantine. Maybe a lot of people obviously travel to see family, spread out throughout Europe. So if they're going to have to quarantine to see one, and then they're not going to be able to see someone else, then they're probably just going to wait. And we've seen in the UK as well, the TUI had some statistics, and I think they said bookings are up something like 130% for next year. But a lot of people seem to be foregoing the travel this year because of all this uncertainty that's weighing on it.
Great stuff. They're saying they expect to fly 60% of their pre-pandemic capacity in July through September. Well, what do you make of that projection?
Yeah, I mean, they can fly it for sure, but it's how much profit are they going to make on that? Again, it all depends on that flight to sales ratio. That's the important thing. If they can't fill up the planes, and there's plenty of anecdotal evidence that obviously many of the planes aren't being full up at all, then they're not going to turn the profit. But they are at least flying. They're giving employment. It is the green shoots again. But I think a lot of the risk now depends on this Delta variant and whether or not governments respond to that. There's encouraging news on the vaccination front that it does seem to be protecting the most vulnerable and limiting the consequences. But obviously the case numbers are still high, and there's still, again, a lot of uncertainty about what that means, what the virus means and whether or not it will escalate further. So good, but, we've got to maintain some caution, and whilst staying positive that obviously this is an improvement.
Tim, thank you so much. Really appreciate your insights looking at those numbers for United and EasyJet. Thank you so much. Tim Vollans, Macrodesiac analyst.